always think of, you have your Twitter feed open, you have this open, you're trying to figure out what's happening, what you can write about. How does one accomplish something and be successful in careers like that, while at the same time trying to balance the ills, so to speak, of multitasking?
Well, I think without question that if you're running a multimedia company, the most important thing you can do is set the editorial priorities and make sure that you have people that you really trust and believe in running different departments and reporting to you, of course, and you being completely involved, but you don't have to be on 24/7, and nobody needs to be on 24/7. The media operation is to be on 24/7, but not the same people. And that applies whether you're running a media company, whether you're running an investment bank with clients around the world. This is the era of collaboration. We need to recognize that if we work in teams, then somebody from the team will be on at all hours, but not the same person.
I see this tension between multitasking, kind of the rise of technology and how tethered we all are to our phones, to all of these things going on. But at the same time, a lot of the solutions are also technologically based. So you have appendices in your book about all the ways that our phones and our computers can actually help us be more mindful. And I just found that a fascinating tension, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about what the role of technology is in all of this.
Yes, I found it fascinating too, but then truth is paradoxical. And one of the paradoxes is that we are now increasingly using technology to help us disconnect from technology and reconnect with ourselves. And some of the most successful features, like the Apple feature, Do Not Disturb, or wearable devices that are related to our growing recognition that we need to learn to disconnect from technology in order to actually nurture our humanity. Our relationship with technology has led to an enormous amount of behavioral addictions, and we need to treat them seriously in our own lives. For me, it starts with the first step, which is picking a time at the end of your day, preferably at least half an hour before you're going to go to sleep, when you turn off all your devices and gently escort them out of your bedroom. This is paramount. Because my nightstand is a completely device-free zone that has spiritual books, a candle, a flower, and water, so that before I go to sleep, I can really disconnect from my life and recognize that there is another dimension to who I am beyond being the editor of the Huffington Post or the author of Thrive or the mother of these 2 children.
What would you say, though, to someone who's at a different stage in their career who say, well, I just can't afford to do that. I need to get this promotion, or I need to get my paycheck and not get fired. And to do that, I need to be connected. How do I then become mindful if I can't take the space and time?
So a lot depends on, obviously, where you're working. There are 35% of American companies now, mid-size as well as large, that have introduced some form of mindfulness into the workplace. That's a phenomenal amount of companies. And there is also a new listening in the air. I was talking to 2 young women exactly at the stage you are describing. It was their first job at a company, at McKinsey actually. And they decided to go to their bosses and say to them that, we're going to work really hard, get everything done during the week, but we take our weekends off. Obviously, if there is an emergency, here is our cell phone, but we're not on email. That was a risk, right? Especially in companies which are seen as the boiler room of burnout. 3 months later, their boss's boss came to them and told them that they had been identified as leaders in the company. Because not only did they do a great job, but they had set boundaries. They had the guts to set boundaries for themselves. Now, I am pretty confident that if that conversation had taken place 2-3 years ago, the reaction would not have been the same. But now this conversation that we are having here is part of business magazines. It's part of the Harvard Business School and the Stanford Business School. So bosses are not so surprised if they hear that from new employees, and provided they do a good job, talent is the hardest thing to find at the moment. And increasingly, companies are going to recognize that if they're going to recruit and retain talent, they need to make sure that they provide conditions which are humane.